The most startlingly beautiful are performed with blood-red fans swirled above the head and around the nuns' waists. At times, the fans are spun open, at others flipped closed, the effect more dance than martial art. Other exercises involve two nuns sparring, circling each other with clenched fists, thrusting, shoving, grabbing the other's neck in the crook of their arms and pushing their opponent to the ground. Some of the moves are conducted with the fighting sticks held in both hands and used as both shield and weapon. As each series of maneuvers comes to an end, the nuns again draw their fist into their palm, then push their open hands slowly down by their sides. It is only this subtle closing movement that returns to the women the gentle demeanor of their monastic calling. What I am witnessing in this striking pre-dawn display is more than 1,000 years of tradition being turned on its head. For more than a millennium, this practice of kung fu was reserved only for monks, its roots lying far to the north in the legendary Chinese monastery of Shaolin. It was here in the 5th century that kung fu was said to have originated after Bodhidharma, an Indian prince turned Buddhist monk, set out to take the teachings of the Buddha to China. On finding temples there vulnerable to attack by thieves, and many of the monks struggling with the rigors of monastic life, the monk devised a system of fitness and defense that drew heavily on the ancient traditions of Indian yoga. Like yoga, Shaolin Kung Fu developed from an observation of the way animals move. Over the centuries, the Shaolin monks incorporated many different animal postures into their practice until eventually the mastery of many of these styles developed into a form represented by a dragon. Unlike the fire-breathing dragon of Western mythology, the Chinese dragon is a powerful spiritual creature. It is telling then that the nuns of Gawa Kilwa belong to the Drukpa order of Himalayan Buddhism, Druk being the Tibetan word for both dragon and thunder. As the first blush of sunlight bleeds over the horizon, the nuns draw their morning kung fu practice to a close. A deep rumble of drums can be heard in the distance, and high on the roof of the nunnery's main temple, I see the silhouettes of two figures blowing hard into gold and jewel-encrusted conch shells. This piercing bugle call is the Buddhist call to prayer. It is barely 5 a.m., and 2 hours of elaborate ritual and worship in the temple will follow before the nuns and I sit down to breakfast. The ferocity of these morning exercises at Gawa Kilwa seems the antithesis of spiritual endeavor. But this practice I am privileged to have observed not only builds the women's physical and mental strength, it also instills in them a growing sense of confidence. This is an entirely new experience for Buddhist nuns who, through the centuries, have often been neglected and overlooked. From the moment I began planning this journey, I wanted to start here, on this rooftop in Nepal. Seeing young nuns engaging in kung fu seemed to offer the perfect introduction to a story of spiritual empowerment. That it was happening so close to the place where the Buddha was born more than 2,000 years ago added to its symbolism. But this is not a straightforward tale, nor was it to be an easy one to follow, as I began to realize on the tortuous route to Gawa Kilwa. When I descended through the smog to Kathmandu Airport in the autumn of 2012, I knew little about Nepal. I knew that today it is one of the poorest countries in the world, beset by the aftermath of 10 years of Maoist insurrection. This conflict only petered out in 2006, when the King of Nepal agreed to restore parliamentary democracy. 2 years later, a Maoist-led parliament reduced the king's status to that of a figurehead and declared the country a republic. But it was not the self-declared Maoists